Welcome back to Big Brave Business. I'm your host, Sarah K. Heater. Big Brave Business is a podcast where we challenge the status quo of traditional business practices. So if you're ready to challenge norms, rewrite the rules, and redefine what it means to lead with courage and integrity, then grab a notebook and let's dive in. Welcome back to Big Brave Business. I'm so freaking pumped about this episode today. I have a guest here that I'm excited to introduce you to. Bri Norberg has been an entrepreneur for over 12 years. She is a visibility and personal branding mentor, and she helps entrepreneurs unapologetically take up space online and become known as the expert in their industry. So thank you so much for being here. Welcome to the podcast, Bri.
Hello, I'm so happy to be here and I'm so grateful for this opportunity. I'm so excited for this conversation.
Yeah, so we met at Be Brand Live, and I've talked, if you've been listening to this podcast, first of all, thank you. But second of all, I've talked about this event a lot because not only obviously did I also speak there like you did, but we also just had Ati on the podcast a few weeks before this episode comes out. And so, yeah, it's become like the Be Brand Live
I love
promotional
it.
season. But I met so many cool people there, and you were one of them. And it was just so special.
Oh, I know. It was so lovely to meet you. That was such an incredible event. It definitely just unlocked certain things in my brain for myself and my business. And it was so special. And it just shows the power of Instagram friends, like meeting people in the online space and how powerful it can be. So yeah, I'm super grateful to be connected to you. And I love everything that you're doing.
Back at ya. So you speak in general about taking up space and being visible. And I think when I've talked to people in building this podcast and kind of what big brave business means, when I ask people like, what does it mean to you to be brave in business, or what's the bravest thing you do in your business, people are constantly talking about visibility. And I think being visible is an act of like fierce bravery, and it's a lot. So I want to start with you personally and your experience. What has it taken for you, or what does it continue to take to be brave enough to be visible?
I love that. I think that's wonderful. And it definitely is a requirement in order to be visible is to be brave because when you're showing up anywhere in your life, but especially in the online space, it kind of taps into the same fear of like public speaking, which is a super common fear. People are afraid to be seen, afraid to be judged, criticized. And we are our worst critic, our hardest critic. So we overanalyze everything that we create and want it to be perfect, want to sound competent. And so it does take a lot of courage to be seen. And so for me, that journey, I was once a very insecure child growing up, and I cared a lot about what other people thought about me. And I had all of those fears around being seen and wanting to be palatable for people and not be too much. I think that that is the theme of my life is I was always the loud kid and I was, bullied for that. And even to this day, I will be told to be quiet in my family circles of you're being too loud or you're annoying or whatever. And I think over the span of the last few years, I realized like, oh, okay, that's actually my superpower. That is the reason why I've been successful in business and I've been an entrepreneur for so many years is because I've been able to harness it, leverage it, and kind of lead the way of, hey, how can you take what you once were insecure about or a part of you that you weren't once really proud about and actually put that in the front and center in your marketing? Because at the end of the day, marketing is not the job of marketing is to be polarizing. You want to repel the wrong people and attract the right people. And the way that you do that is by unapologetically, courageously finding exactly what sets you apart, what makes you unique, and then putting that shit on blast in the online space. That's what I say all the time is find that thing that maybe you've been hiding. Maybe you're a little afraid to show it to the world. That's going to be the $1 million messaging. That's going to be what sets you apart. That's your X factor. And oftentimes people want to hide those parts of themselves because maybe they had a story told to them growing up that was wrong or bad or it didn't fit in, because society teaches us just to fall in line, fit in. And if you go outside of that expectation, you're at risk of ostracizing yourself. And it's like a primal thing. Like we're community-oriented beings. We thrive in relationship with others. So when you start to be different, you're going to trigger that primal response of no, if you're different, you're going to stand out, which puts you at risk of being ostracized from the tribe. This is all like very subconscious, so we don't really know what's happening. When it comes up as, "Oh, I don't want to post that," or "Oh, I look silly." And that's how it surfaces. Those are the symptoms of it, but if we're getting like on a deep psychological level, it's because of that. So, I think for me, and this is such a long-winded response, but when I figured out like that is the thing that's going to make me a shit ton of money, like that's when I really started to channel that and be proud of it.
There's so much about this that I find fascinating, Bri. And one of the things is the stories that we believe about ourselves based on what we were told as a kids.
Mm,
And especially that you mentioned this is still something that comes up in your family. So it's not just from when you were a kid. It's the
yeah.
story that's being told by the people who raised you, the people who have known you your whole life, the people who theoretically know you the best. But I think sometimes what happens with like the stories we believe about ourselves because of what our families have told us is that or whoever raised us is that they made assumptions about us based on their own experiences and their own insecurities as kids, and then their brains continue to look for evidence that that story is true throughout our whole lives, and it doesn't give us room to change or grow or be flexible identity people, even though that's not real. And I want to share, since you shared that, I want to share one of mine, which is that my mom, and bless you if you're listening, thank you so much, one of my biggest fans, but my mom told me a lot as a kid that I had a problem with starting things I could not finish, that I had big, big ideas and I would start projects and I would have the best of intentions and they'd be really cool, great ideas. And then I wouldn't follow through and actually finish them. I would start and not finish. And I have this like vision when I tell the story of this. Do you remember growing up? Because I think we're really similar in age, the pot holders that you would like weave. I don't know what the fabric was, but they were
Yes.
like, okay, thank
Yeah.
you. So
Yeah.
I had this vision because I thought they were fun to make. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, I'm going to try to find something and I'll link it in the description. But
Okay.
I had this idea that I was going to make these pot holders for all of my extended family as a little kid for Christmas presents or something one year. And so I started all of these pot holders and then they just sat in the bottom of my closet for like years. And
Wow.
so when I think about this story of myself that I've been told my whole life, I start things that I can't finish. I picture this abandoned project of these like half woven pot holders in the bottom of my closet. And I had this deep seated fear when I started my business that I wasn't going to be a successful entrepreneur because I start things I can't finish. Like I have great ideas, but I don't follow through on them.
Mm,
And I mean, that hasn't been true at all in business. And so I like have had to rewire. I think really what she witnessed as I understand myself more and I'm like doing more of that kind of soul searching of identity work and being really self-aware and exploring all these different types of personality assessments and whatnot. My
wow.
human design type is manifester. And
Mm,
when I first ran my human design report, I was expecting to get manifesting generator because that's what everyone talks about as online business owners or coaches. This is what we are. We're all manifesting generators. So I ran mine expecting that. And when I got
okay.
manifester, it fed into that same story of I'm not a manifesting generator because I start things, but I can't finish
Oh,
them. And now this is proof that I can't be an entrepreneur because I'm
oh
not a manifesting generator. And I had to like self coach through this whole thing. I
no.
remember very specifically in the shower, like coaching myself through it and thinking, actually, what it means is that my mom saw in me that I was a manifester, that I had these huge, great, big ideas.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
now, as an adult, what I know to be true is that I am a kick ass CEO
Yeah.
because I have the vision and the strategy for some amazing things. And I surround myself with an incredible team who balances me out with
100%.
the implementation of things,
Yes.
right? So
Yes.
actually it positions me perfectly to be a CEO.
I
And
love
so
that.
I've had to rewire my thinking because this is the story that I have been told my whole life.
Mm.
So, anyways, just want to meet you there because I think we say all the time on this podcast, entrepreneurship takes like a big ass spotlight and just shines it right on all the stuff. Like
Yeah.
there's no hiding from
There's
it.
no hiding. Yeah. And in order to actually be successful and still be in business this time next year, you have the opportunity, because I believe it's an opportunity to really explore and excavate and reprogram and rewire and meet yourself on different levels and different phases. So I think it's a beautiful opportunity. I love that you shared that with me. Thank you. It reminded me of a book. I don't know if you've read it. It's called The E-Myth, and there's a new version of it. It
Okay.
talks about the four different types of business people. And I'm curious, the one that I'm thinking is like every business needs an innovator, someone who is forward thinking, creative, visionary, right? But those people aren't necessarily the like executor doers. So being aware of where you actually fall and what you actually want to do, I'm curious how human design could correlate with that. I'm a generator.
Yeah.
So I would be curious, what is the perfect role for me based on that? But I think that's beautiful. And it's these tests, personality tests, and all of these things, they're good feedback. It's great to learn more about ourselves, but not let it become an entire identity where we're blaming it or using it as a justification for lack of action or,
Yeah.
forcing us into this box that we're not able to grow in
Yes.
out of. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I think it's something like that you thought was once like your Achilles tendon could actually be your superpower. Especially
Exactly.
getting the support around you, that's so smart. So that's where it's beneficial. It doesn't mean you can't be a CEO. It just means you get to tap into the talent and other resources available to execute the vision.
Well, and I think it's
Beautiful.
been in when you think about if you're a person who wants to have a team, when you think about growing a team, it's been part of business for decades, if not like centuries, that you want to balance out the talent and the specializations and the zone of genius on
Yep.
your team, right? So there have been all kinds of different assessments over many, many years to try to help people balance out. You have strengths here, and not just who's best suited for a specific role, but also to make sure that your team balances itself. And so I think maybe I want to surround myself with generators. Maybe I want to surround, but whatever it is, right? It's not just one. I don't want just like only generators. I
Right.
want to use the whole field. So yeah, I think that's
Yeah.
true. And I love what you said too about don't let it stop you, because it's not because you're a generator doesn't mean you can't manifest, and because I'm a manifester doesn't mean I can't generate. Like obviously we
Right.
do all the things. It's
Yeah.
just what do we love and what do we thrive at and where do
Yeah.
we feel the most lit up. And I think there's absolutely no question for me that I am a very productive person, but I love the vision and the strategy. I love it. That is my favorite place to be operating from. So,
Yeah.
and I think for you, generating, it makes sense that a big part of what you do is bring people together and connect people with each other. And a lot of your messaging about like, how do I help elevate other people and a rising tide lifts all boats type of
Yeah.
energy,
Totally.
that makes total sense to me.
Yeah. I love that. I don't know enough about it. I just was
Well, me
interviewing
neither.
a podcast
I'm
last.
not an expert.
I'm going to connect you. I think I had a podcast interview last week with someone who specializes in human design, and she did my reading on the podcast interview. I'm going to connect you
Fun.
with her because I think you guys would freaking geek out on all of this
I mean,
and
I literally just
podcast
read the
walk.
word manifester and had a panic attack in the shower. So it's not like I like learned a lot about it. I
Okay,
just
well,
was like,
she can help a lot. Help you navigate that. I
yeah,
love
yeah,
it. That's so
yeah.
cool.
So, okay. So you speaking of what you really specialize in and what you thrive in, so not only have you had to be brave in using your voice and taking up space and being bold in the fact that that's your superpower and not actually, it does not make you annoying. It makes you like an expert at this work.
Thank
How do
you.
you, when you work with other people, how do you help them be brave in being visible?
Yeah. A lot of it is just the deep internal work. Like I do really well at holding space for people and calling them out on limiting beliefs and encouraging them and inspiring them. A lot of the work that needs to be done in order to feel not only generate the courage and the bravery needed, but also start to love yourself more. I think it really boils down to like self-worth. Do you feel worthy? Do you love yourself? Are you going to stop betraying yourself by muting your voice over and over when you're creating content? Because I think that it is a form of betrayal when you're not true to your
Mm.
values and your who you are. So it's, I know it's so heavy. That's the work that we do. I'm so big on strategy and I have a whole content strategy to help you grow an online presence and be seen and showcase your expertise and sell your shit.
Generate. Mm-hmm.
None of that matters.
Mm-hmm.
None of that matters if you don't have any self-worth, if you don't have a strong identity in who you are, if you don't know, if you don't trust yourself. I think that that's the biggest thing over the last few years is like learning how to trust myself, knowing what I deserve, what I stand for, advocating for myself, and building a relationship with me. And it's so like corny, but it's true. Like I know I have my own back and I trust my decisions and I make very intentional, conscious choices. So whenever I make, even if it's not exactly how I wanted it or it didn't pan out exactly how I expected it to, I know everything is serving me for my highest good. I know that every challenging, uncomfortable moment is a lesson. Somehow there is a lesson and it's refining me and it's developing me as a leader, as a business owner, as an aunt, as a sister, as a daughter, right? It's each part of this journey serves a purpose, even if it's uncomfortable, especially if it's uncomfortable. So it's it's 20% strategy, right? It's 20% strategy and doing the work, but in order to do the work, you have to be the person who's capable of doing. I like the phrase like you have to be, then you have to do, then you have to have. It can be no other way. You have to be the person in order to do the work, in order to have everything that you want. And I think that that is a missing piece in a lot of people's story in business because they think I have to do, I have to do, I have to produce, I have to show up, I have to do the strategy, I have to try the different strategies and they forget who do you have to be in order to actually do that? Because you can't be who you are now, or else you'd have all of those things. So you need to get really clear on who is this person and what feelings are they trying to cultivate. I think that's a missing piece in that journey.
What made me have like the biggest reaction out of all of the things that you just said is the word betrayal. And I'm particularly interested in this, and I've shared a little bit on this podcast before, but I've shared more on other people's podcasts about my experience with personally with betrayal trauma coming from a past partner. And I had to heal from some significant infidelity issues.
Mm.
And some of the things that happened in that journey. And I'm going to link an episode from my friend Katie's podcast. Katie's been on here before, but she has a podcast called Ditch the Ick. And I went on there and I like way went into detail about this. But
Yeah.
basically, I had this kind of epiphany moment where I was thinking about what if all of the like big scary what ifs about what does this mean about my life now being alone, right?
Mm.
And I found myself thinking, what would I say in response to those big scary questions? What would I say if the person who was asking those questions was like someone I love, like one of my best friends or whatever, somebody really close to me? And as I had that thought, I immediately had this light bulb moment of if someone I love asked this question, like someone I love is asking this question, me. Like that
Mm.
needs to be number one. And I
Yeah.
like just got chills remembering being in that moment because it was a very big, when you said, I know it sounds cheesy of working on your relationship with you, but no, actually, I think that is the work, dude. Like
Yeah.
when I had that realization of what if this was someone I loved, and it's not like I hated myself. I've never been a person who hated myself, and no shade to anybody who has, because I think there's a lot of people, especially women, who struggle with that. And I think it was a realization that I don't love myself the way I deserve to be loved. And before I enter any other relationship from that point forward, asking someone new to love me, I gotta figure out how to love myself the way I deserve. Right. And then it's easier for me to ask other people to love me how I
Yeah.
deserve. So I've thought about this so much in the context of like personal relationships. And I do believe that business is personal, but I've never really thought about it in terms of like when it comes to how I show up in my business. And where I think this is super relevant to how you and I met is that one of the things that I said I loved the most about BU Brand Live is that speaking on that stage was the least brave thing I did that whole weekend. I showed up that whole weekend as exactly the version of myself I want to be. I said yes to things and I put myself in uncomfortable like situations, and
Yeah.
I was visible, right? I put
Yeah.
myself into some networking situations and some friendship situations where I really put myself as truly me on display. And the result was that I had experiences and made relationships with people that I really love and cherish. And I'm so proud of how I showed up. And it made stepping on that stage easy, quite honestly,
Yeah.
because then I just showed up as exactly how I was showing up the whole
Yeah.
rest of the weekend.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. I think that's so powerful. I love that. And thank you for sharing. And I witnessed it and it was
Thank
wonderful.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess I'm curious, like if somebody's listening and they're thinking, okay, that's the kind of stuff I want to do. I want to talk on a stage, or I want to walk into even networking, because you do a lot of networking
I do.
and you like run a networking group.
I do.
So for people who are like, all right, I want to walk into a room and maybe I want to walk on stages, or maybe I don't even want to go there. It's just when I walk into a room with other people, I'm insecure about everything from my weight, my skin, my hair, my teeth, my voice, my age, my the way I'm dressed, literally all of the things. Like I'm overwhelmed about all the things. And when I'm bogged down by all of those details, how the heck do I walk in and be the best version of myself and show off all of the great things that I do know I'm good at?
Right.
What are some tips that people could do?
Oh, yeah. So this is not my area of expertise in this recommendation, but doing subconscious reprogramming, hypnosis, NLP, like there's a lot of support out there around reprogramming your subconscious mind because there are some deeply rooted psychological scripts that play
Mm,
that are running our entire lives that we're not even consciously aware of. And if we're not healing those stories, that childhood trauma and programming and society's expectations, like it's all layered. I can't just tell you like just do it or do the things that scare you. That's not going to resonate and it's not going to help, honestly. If they're in a place where they're unable to move, you know what I mean? That means that there's deeper work that needs to be done with people who specialize in those things. And I have plenty of resources that I can direct people to when it comes to the subconscious reprogramming, because I think that that is the work, that hypnosis, breath work, meditation, there's a lot that can be done and that is readily available when it comes to that type of deep rooted psychological reprogramming. So that and doing the scary thing. So I will say, do that work, heal, do the reprogramming and learn how to manage your internal mind. I have read so many books about this topic. And I have a whole list. If you want it, let me know. I have a list of all of these books. I'm looking at my bookshelf right now, and it cracked me open. I recognized my ability to be in control of my thoughts, recognize that I am not my thoughts. I am the watcher of the thoughts. I am not these beliefs and these thought processes that run incessantly in my mind on autopilot all day long. I was able to kind of step back and observe the internal chatter going on in my mind, which allowed me to disconnect from those self-sabotaging narratives and recognize, oh, okay, that's a story that I'm telling myself. That's not my reality. And you said it earlier, our brain does a really good job at scanning the world, seeking evidence to validate our beliefs. So it starts with our beliefs. I've seen like different like mental frameworks to help you get out of the downward spiral. And a lot of times they miss like you'll have a thought, the thought creates an action, the action creates a result. The thought comes back to a deeply rooted belief. And if we don't analyze the beliefs, if we don't excavate those beliefs, reprogram those beliefs, then the thoughts won't change and then the actions won't change. So it's important to do that work. And then once you are able to identify the belief systems and reprogram them so that they are ones that are productive and uplifting and empowering, then your brain is going to naturally start to scan the world to seek evidence of that belief. It's confirmation bias. Our brains do a really good job at trying to gather information and make sense of things. So once you have been able to do the subconscious reprogramming of those beliefs and actually learn like what you believe now, whose belief is that? That was a big part of my journey is I grew up with all of these beliefs from like my Christian upbringing, from my mom, from society, and I just never questioned them. I was never a questioner up until I was 30 years old. It's disgusting to even say that, but whatever, it's my journey. And finally I was like, what do I believe? If I were to be stripped of all of this and start to create from a blank slate, what are my values? And then start to design my own belief system, which is scary and so exciting. But I remember a phase, a very brief phase of feeling like I have no identity. Like I was just stripped of my entire identity. What do I believe now? And that's like a beautiful, beautiful place to be because then you can design it based on who you are and what you believe in and what your preferences are. Once you do that deep internal work, which there is support, I am not that person, but there are plenty of people out there who can support you on that journey. Then it is, okay, so what is the do now? Because that's the B. So what is the do? And part of that process for me was committing to doing anything that scared me. I was like, I'm going to say yes. I'm going to say yes to everything that makes me feel a little butterflies in my stomach, a little fear. And because of that, I went spelunking, which is cave exploration. I have claustrophobia. I went skydiving. I have a fear of heights. I climbed a 14,000-foot mountain, two of them, and I'm afraid of heights and falling to my death, right? So I was doing all of these things very intentionally, consciously, because I knew on the other side of that is like massive amounts of confidence and just a confidence in my ability to do hard things. So then I can use that as evidence for future tasks that are difficult, challenging,
Yeah.
uncomfy. I can say, no, bitch, you did all this shit in the past. Are you serious? This is nothing. And you use it kind of like a guidepost. And just again, that evidence, we want to gather evidence and use that evidence to help us move in the direction of where we're going, which is always going to be scary, always going to be uncomfortable. That's just the nature of the game, especially in entrepreneurship. It's constantly triggering, it's inherently triggering, and you're going to get all of your shit coming up. And what a beautiful opportunity to heal and reprogram and become the best version of yourself so that then you can create that ripple effect in your business. It's just so, it's so beautiful and so uncomfortable at the same time.
Yeah, yes, I totally agree. What I always say is that entrepreneurship is the most fun thing I've ever done. And I think for all of the reasons that you're saying, I mean, I've done interesting things, but I have not been spelunking and I've not climbed a 14,000-foot mountain, but is that what you said, 14,000 feet?
14,000,
Wow.
14,10.
Wow, twice. I have not done those things. However, my business feels like that to me.
Yeah,
Like it
right.
feels like doing those things just in a different way. So I can
Totally.
absolutely see the connection. And I think in a recent episode, I was talking about doing things that get you out of your comfort zone, drive a different route, go to a restaurant with a type of cuisine that you've never had before, and
Yeah.
go visit a country that it doesn't speak primarily the for your first language, right? Go put yourself in these situations, and when you start exercising that muscle of taking calculated risk, right, then taking calculated risks gets easier. So I definitely am like a big believer in that. And I guess I'm curious, like in 12 years of business, and doing a lot of work with a lot of other businesses. So, probably lots of room for inspiration and vision and ideas. What does where you are right now today, what does being big and brave in your business look like? What's the big brave stuff you're doing or working toward, or I don't know.
I love that question. So it means something different for me in this season right now. I think for me personally, and also for other people who are in a season, being brave means walking away from certain things that no longer serve you, that you have been massively committed to for the sake of not throwing in the towel, not giving up, and realizing that sometimes walking away from something is the best thing for you. And it doesn't mean that you are a failure or that you're letting people down or that you're letting yourself down. It goes back to honoring yourself and being your biggest advocate. And sometimes that means walking away from the thing that created the most growth in your life and being bold enough and brave enough to walk away from something when you're someone who's like massively obsessively committed to things. That requires a lot of courage. So for me, that's what it means in this season. And before, a year ago, it would have meant something different. But I think that's the journey of entrepreneurship, is knowing it's not linear, and that walking away from something isn't failure. It could be redirection. It could be opening up a new door for different opportunities. And yeah, so that's what that means for me. And giving yourself permission to pivot and decide that that's not what you want anymore. I think the phrase, one of my best friends says this all the time, like, I reserve the right to change my mind. And that is powerful, because I think a lot of the time in the online space, I worried about contradicting myself a lot. I noticed that recently. I didn't want to change anything because I didn't want other people to think that I was going back on my word or something. And I think that's growth. That's growth. That's evolving. That's learning. That's changing your belief systems and learning more about yourself and what you want. And part of that is detaching from certain things that no longer serve you. So that is what it means for me in this season.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to be said for, first of all, when you just mentioned that you have been practicing in your life in the last handful of years saying yes to things, that then choosing to say no to something is actually, wait, I've been building this yes muscle. Like, I've been building yes. And now learning how to say no is a whole other muscle to
Yeah.
exercise and to practice, and how to know when to do which, right?
Yep.
And I think there's also something to be said for, you kind of mentioned this, releasing something makes space for something else. And whether that's, it makes space literally, like in your calendar, or whether it makes space energetically, or the bandwidth that you have to offer. And
Yeah.
that can look different in different seasons, right? You shared recently some things about your personal life that have changed and shifted and come into your life. And I think that sometimes releasing things like professionally makes space for things personally, or
Yeah.
vice versa. And
Yeah.
that's going to happen in both directions, because then when things shift in your personal life and something goes away or changes or whatever, it can mean, okay, now I'm going to throw myself into work too. So it works personally to professionally, it works professionally to professionally, it works personally to personally. Like, all of
Totally.
those things really, we only have so much of ourselves to give.
Yeah. Yeah.
And depending on what is taking up space in our brains, in our hearts, in our, like, what's keeping you up at night, there's only so many hours for me to lay awake at night. So whatever it is that's keeping me up at night, if I release that, then it makes space for something else, right?
Like sleep.
No, man,
Yeah.
what a concept. Yeah.
Weird. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I love that. I needed to hear that too. So thank you.
Yeah. Oh, good. Yeah. I
Yeah.
think that there's just a lot of layers to it, and certainly for the sake of evolution we have to shed old skin to enter the next version, and that's got to be true for business. And I think 12 plus years in business, there's going to be a lot of pivoting, there's going to be a lot of evolution, there's going to be a lot of things that shift and change and evolve, and that's good. If you were doing the same thing 12 years in that you were doing on day one, then you wouldn't
Right.
have made very much progress in 12 years, right?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. It's been a wild, wild journey over the last 12 years for sure. And I'm grateful for all of the wild business ideas that I've had. So they all serve a purpose.
Yeah. What's on your kind of dream board for things that you still want to do in business? Because you've done some incredible things. You have some incredible things coming up. I saw you have a pinned post about a retreat that is that literally like next week?
Literally, I leave next week, a week from today. It's my
Okay.
first retreat. I love it's so funny because I didn't trust myself in hosting retreat because it's so much responsibility. And I was like, no, I can't do it by myself. I can't do it by myself. And then I was like, wait, motherfucker, you have been to so many different countries solo traveling.
Yeah.
And then I was like, oh, but what about food? I can't feed people. I'm like, I used to own a meal prep company. Like, I know how to prep food for people. I used to want to own my own restaurant. So I'm like, I could do it. So I decided I was like, I'm going to do it. And now it's literally next week. We have 7 people, 9 people total, including me going, 7 people signed up. And I just mapped out the itinerary. I sent out the packing list. I'm so pumped. So this is going to be a staple in my offerings every year. I love curating experiences and I love traveling. So I'm going to do that together. So that, and with Powered by Women, that's going to be a really big focus for 2025. We've expanded into different cities and I'm looking to continue to expand and really just continue to build out the infrastructure in order to support that growth and be able to support these chapter leads and host their own events and grow their audiences in their respective cities. And my focus is booking speaking engagements. I definitely am. There's a book in my brain that needs to come out. And so that is going to be on my to-do list. I think I'm pulling back a little bit from the coaching, like high touch access coaching. But again, I reserve the right to change my mind.
Yeah. And I think sometimes the right opportunities come along and you're like, this is something I want to do. This is something I want to work on. That doesn't mean that any person could just come apply to work with me. But in this specific case, I want to work with this person and we've
Totally.
come to an agreement. Like that makes sense. So that all sounds super exciting. And I think, yeah, we're going to have another conversation. So by the time this comes out, your retreat will have happened. So you're going to have to come back on and talk about, if you're open to it, the experience about planning a retreat, executing that, what you learned from it, and what you'll take with you into the next one,
Oh
especially
yeah.
planning a big brave business retreat is something that is on my heart for 2025.
Very
So
excited.
I briefly touched on this in a previous episode. It's getting clearer, but I think my intention at this point would be to invite people who've been guests on the podcast because I have these incredible conversations with you. And I think I really want to introduce you to each other, but also I want to be in the room when you meet. And then I
Yeah.
think, what if we were all in the room together?
That's
And like, what
exciting.
conversations would be happening over those couple of
Yeah.
days? So
I
that's like
love that
really,
idea.
really on my heart. And so I'm like, retreats are on the brain. So I want to chat with you about that anyway.
I'll
But
give you all the tea.
yeah. Yeah. Okay, cool. I'm excited about that. And I'm just glad. I feel like there was some like childhood therapy discussion that happened. Neither of us are therapists, but I feel like if that brought up some stuff for you, you might want to call yours.
Yeah.
But I hope that it was helpful. And I hope as both of us are talking about like our inner child that we're carrying into business, I hope that the person listening, I hope that you feel your inner child is seen and validated through today's discussion and so much more. But thank you, of course. If you want to connect with Bri, all of her information is going to be in the description. And I wrote down like a bunch of notes too of things to link. So there's all kinds of goodies there.
Yeah.
But I always like to end these conversations with the same question, which is it could be business related, but does not have to be. What is making you happy right now?
I know this, it's such an easy answer. I am in a new relationship and it is everything that I've ever wanted. And coming from someone who's very hyper independent and was coming to the conclusion that I might not ever find that person and never have a family and all of these things. I know that's so dramatic to be in this dynamic where this is like my partner for life. It's insane. It's giving me so much happiness and fulfillment. So right now that is 100%. And usually it's business all the time. It's
I
always
know,
business.
I know.
So for it to not be business is really exciting and it says a lot. So
That's beautiful. And I don't think that that sounds dramatic. I'm sure it feels more dramatic than it is. But when I was just talking about the like big scary questions that I was coping with at that time in my life when I was realizing I'm a person that I love, that needs to come first. The big scary question at that time was like, what if in my life no one wants to marry me? What if I never get asked that question? That was the big scary question for me at that time. And it shouldn't matter because it shouldn't be about like your marital status as to whether you have a big, happy, full life. But
yeah,
that question of what if no one ever asks me, that was like the elephant in the room all the time. And then to my point earlier, if my best friend said that to me, right? Like,
it changes.
and I still have a happy life. If no one ever asks me to marry them, I'd be like, girl, what are you fucking talking about? So,
Right?
yeah, but also validating like that was a very real fear. So,
Yeah.
anyways, I'm only like answering you with that because I think anybody who's listening who can relate or who feels that or has felt that, we fucking get it. And it's terrifying. So, in a
Yeah.
society that makes you feel like that measures the worth of your life. No, it's terrifying, but I'm also happy to see you so happy and smiley and giddy. And that's beautiful. Okay, so something that's making me happy right now. Okay, I'm going to say 2025 year planning, which is ridiculous. And I think this episode literally comes out in January 2025. So I'll have done a lot more planning by then.
Oh, exciting.
But I've been trying to put more events on my calendar because so much of what I've done in my business has all been virtual. I started my company in 2019. So then everything went virtual very quickly in 2020.
Totally. Yeah.
And this year I've been doing a lot more in person. And next year I'm like, I want to do a lot more travel and I want to go to events and I want to go to conferences and not just like networking things, which I love, but also like conferences. They're just so fun and engaging and
Okay,
uh,
you go to the Table Experience. It's a business conference in February in Phoenix.
yeah, it's on my calendar, but it is my husband's birthday, and I think we're going to be on a
Oh
family
gosh.
vacation at
Okay,
that time.
fair. That's
But it is
totally
on my
fair.
calendar because it looks great. So if you're listening and you're in Phoenix, yeah, that definitely. I saw that you're promoting it. It's just such a small, weird world because you don't live in the same city, and the people who I found out about it from are
Yeah.
just so completely disconnected from how I met you. And so
Oh, I
then
love it.
for us all
It's
to
the
end up in
internet.
the same circle is just like totally
It's
weird,
so
but
cool. I love it.
yeah. So no, it looks great, but I don't know. If I'm around, I will go. I will definitely
Okay.
be there. But
Deal. I would love to see
um
you in person.
yeah. So, okay, but yes, I think that there's just a lot of cool things and so now I'm having to dial back what's realistic budgetarily and
Sure.
also
Sure.
like for my health because
Yeah,
traveling too much is not good for a lot of my balance.
totally.
Although I would love to. So I just have to find the balance of everything and make priorities. But so far I have literal tickets to 3 conferences next year. And then I have some that are like, of course, I'll go there as soon as there are tickets available. I will buy them. So I'm sure Black Friday is going to be like freaking Candyland for me. I'm going to be like, and this one, and this one, and this one.
I love it.
We'll
That's
see.
exciting. I love traveling to a retreat. I went to Autis and then Powerhouse Women, and I'm just like, oh, I love this. I love going to a different state, city with my business besties, and we're all in a hotel together. And oh, it's like my favorite thing ever.
Yeah.
At
The
the
day
retreat.
that,
Oh, go ahead.
sorry, the day that we're recording this, 4 of the meetings on my calendar are all with people that I met at BU Brand Live, which is so weird, like that
Oh,
it all
that's
came on the same day. But yeah, I
cool.
think that's such a good way to build your circle with like meaningful relationships. But go ahead. What were you going to say?
I don't know, but it was just about the experience of traveling and being in the room,
Yeah.
making connections. Like in real life, people crave that, especially since 2020. We all want that in real life human connection. And I just love hugging people in real life. And you can't recreate that, even though Zoom is great. You can't really recreate
Yeah.
that same experience. So, yeah, I love that that's your goal for 2025. I'm sure I'll see you in some of those rooms.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. For sure. And keep me posted on where you're planning to go so that I can see if it fits in my calendar. And
Yeah.
I'll tell you the ones I'm most excited about as
Oh,
well.
we're hosting a huge business conference in Sacramento, 10/10/25.
Well, I don't think I have anything on October. So there you go.
There you
Thanks
go.
for
I
my
needed a long
October spot.
timeline to start preparing. So that's going to be in Sacramento. It's going to be fun.
And Sacramento's nice and easy. That's another thing that's so frustrating. There's like so many of the things I find are on the East Coast. And I love the East Coast, but it is 3,000
It's,
miles, 2,500 miles, depending
it
on where
is.
it is.
Yeah.
And that is far. Like,
It is
it's a
a
lot.
big commitment for sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
Yeah. So, anyways, okay. This has been so fun. And I'm already excited for bringing you back and to hear all about your retreat planning experience. And
Yeah.
thank you for being here. I appreciate you.
Thank you. I appreciate this conversation and the opportunity.